Good morning, Dr. Zerberg. So this week we kind of talked about where do we go from here within Homeland Security after reading the entirety of this book and kind of understanding all the organizations and essentials and all that within DHS. And I want to tell you that I hate you for asking these questions because I know you know how complex it is. Asking something like where do we go from here after learning everything that you can possibly learn, and there's so many different directions that DHS can actually go, whether or not they want to dismantle everything or they want to branch it out, or if they want to stay together, or if they want to change and focus on a different area. There's so many different things that could actually happen. So hopefully I'll be able to answer these questions to the best of my ability. I've been working on this since Tuesday. It's now Saturday, so if that tells you anything. But for question number one, I think that DHS's mission of preventing terrorist attacks is definitely greater than their mission of protecting or fixing natural and traditional disasters and hazards and those type of things. And the reason I think that is because it's kind of been our primary focus around terrorism. We've seen that within every single chapter of this book, as well as just period and every day. DHS has kind of focused on, since 9/11, we've been in the spot where we experienced the biggest tragedy America's ever experienced, and it shocked us in every single way possible. And since then, we've changed our local, state, federal systems. We've changed our transportation systems, our internet and web browser systems. We've changed our trade and communication with other countries. And so many things have went into play because I don't think that we ever expected what happened on 9/11 to actually happen. And I think that's why that has been our primary focus, because we're so, I don't want to say terrified, but we are scared of something like that ever happening again. And I think that's why it's been more important than, natural disasters and hazards and those things. And those type of things are also pretty certain whenever they do happen. We kind of know what's going to go down most of the time. Sometimes we even have like a heads up when these things are going to happen. So I think that maybe, that's why terrorism has kind of been our main focus, because we just, it's something that we don't see coming, and I feel like we've tried every way to prepare for it and, hope of preventing it and those type of factors. So I definitely think that is greater for DHS, their mission. For number two, the authors contend that FRP should be recreated with FEMA returned to the role of directing the federal emergency response effort. I do agree with that. And I found in the book also, excuse me, I worked all night. I put right here, rebuilding the nation's emergency management system, especially the role of the federal government in the system, doesn't conflict with the primary mission of DHS, as I just stated. It's kind of a critical element to the overall Homeland Security strategy, and I definitely agree with that. I think by, pulling FEMA out, and it's going to give them an opportunity to kind of sit down and focus directly on what we need to do as far as dealing with the traditional mitigations, preparedness, response, and recovery programs of not only the all hazards approaches, but even, including all manners of disaster events, including terrorist attacks. And this is on page 390 if you're interested. But I definitely agree with that, and I think that covers that entirely. I think giving them the opportunity to kind of focus on that is going to make changes, because if right now I just feel like our focus has definitely been on terrorists all the time, and that's just kind of where it's been. So giving them the chance to sit down and focus on that, they may see things that need to be fixed. And obviously we've experienced that with having as many hurricanes and stuff as we've had, and etc. And I also marked down I think that at a minimum, FEMA's experiences could serve as a cautionary tale for Homeland Security officials at the federal, state, and local levels of government. That's kind of going back to exactly what I just said. I think that, if FEMA is able to take a step back and focus on what they need to focus on, it'll give us an opportunity to go through another level before getting to the other things within DHS. So we know that things are being taken care of, if that makes sense. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm rambling. I'm really sorry. And then the last thing that I marked for question number 2, I put on here, the FEMA's policies and programs from that were driven by the needs of disaster victims and the needs of the community residents who wanted to produce the terrible impacts of future events. And basically kind of what this is summing up is we have not focused on the public. What we've been doing is centralizing everything around the government and what our government needs as far as these disasters and these attacks and all of that. But I don't think that that's the case personally. I think that we need to talk to the people first in some aspects. Now, don't let the people make the decisions, obviously, but centralize it around them, centralize it around the victims, and learn from these type of things, so what we know, what we need to do better, if that makes any sense. And then question number 3, in the abuse of any major terrorist attacks, do you believe that DHS will be dismantled? I said abuse, I meant absence. I do think so, but I don't think to an extent of that DHS will completely change. I just think that maybe their primary focus areas will kind of move to a different area if we're not experiencing terrorist attacks like, we've kind of put all of the money and the focus into, if that makes sense. But I don't think that we're going to change that because, 9/11 happened when it did. It's now been, like 20 years later almost. And I don't think that, I think that we're still very aware of terrorist attacks, and I think that we're still extremely cautious about it. I don't know if DHS will completely ever let that go, and I'm not saying they should, but so I don't think they would be really dismantled, but I do think that they would change eventually over time, if that makes sense. What are the greatest threats facing the nation as we look forward into the future? Do you believe the nation is prepared to meet this threat? I think that, kind of what we need to do with moving forward is kind of, again, like, I feel like we need to shift our focus from necessarily the government, but to the public and to the victims and to the intelligence that we already have, if that makes sense. I think that DHS is going to need to remain innovative and seek, engagement with experts, and start forming different partnerships with people and communicating and doing what's necessary outside of the traditional circle of intelligence and security, which is what we've been focusing on. I think that that's important, and I think it needs to be taken care of. And I marked in the book right here, the officials at DHS work in Homeland Security at the state and local levels change one in the future. It is critical that they shift their focus from themselves to the public and that they plan to implement policies and programs with the full involvement of public and their partners. And it worked very well with FEMA, so there's no reason why we can't do it the same with DHS. And, that kind of sums up that. I think that as far as the greatest threat to go that comes to our nation in the future, I don't think terrorism is at a stop. I think that terrorism is just getting started, if that makes any sense. And I hope it doesn't sound as bad as it does. But I think that eventually, things will happen, especially within this country, possibly within this country, that will lead us to having and experiencing bigger threats than what we ever imagined. And I hope that we're prepared to meet these threats. And I think the only way we can do that is by doing those things and gaining partnerships with other places and communicating and shifting our focus into a different area, but still staying to the traditional ways that we've been doing things, because they're not working. I just think maybe enhancing them and moving forward as society moves forward would possibly be a better idea. So I kind of hope that that's kind of an idea about where I think we should go from here. I'm sorry if it sounded like I was rambling, but I thoroughly enjoyed searching and trying to answer these questions. So let me know what you think about that. Shoot me a message in the comment thing on here. Thank you.